Back in Narubar Palace, I used my first spark to craft a weapon. In Liberation of Undermine, I used my first spark to craft a weapon. In Manaforge Omega, I waited until the second week to use my first 2 sparks to craft a staff. And again in Midnight Season 1, I used my first 4 sparks to craft a 2-handed weapon. That's 4 seasons in a row where crafting a weapon was by far the best choice. And in Midnight Season 2, which hasn't even been announced yet, I already know I am crafting a weapon. Unless something changes, it will simply be the most efficient choice. Now, it's great and all to have a strong craft, but there are a few reasons why I don't like crafting a weapon. For my personal character, I feel a bit chained. As a shaman, it makes it a lot harder to sort specs, and if I end up making a staff, I only have 1 embellishment until the 3rd spark, which just makes me feel weak. I felt very weak in Manaforge Omega, where the best choice was to hoard sparks till week 2. For the raid as a whole, because everyone else is crafting a weapon, it makes weapon drops feel pointless. I was vocal about this earlier this tier. On the very first day of Mythic, we went into Dream Rift and had a Mythic offhand drop. This item was useless. Nobody could find any use in it. I kept it to rot in my bag in case I ever found a way to use it, and I did not ever find a way to use it. If we travel back to the past, it will be like the holy grail to get a Mythic offhand on the first day. A big value item that is now kind of just useless until a month into the patch. And my most important point is that it is a bit boring now. We have been doing the same thing over and over again with crafts. It is a solved system. So if I hate crafting a weapon so much, why am I doing it? And the answer is that if you care at all about your power in the first month of a season, or maybe even 2 months of a season, you are insane to not craft a weapon. It is mathematically the best choice by a significant margin. A weapon gives 5 times more main stat per eye level than the next best slot. So if you wanted to get any slot at 285 day 1, weapon is the best craft there. Now there are 2 different types of specs. We have dual wield specs, and then we have specs that can use 2-handers. For a dual wield spec like Rogue or DH, a weapon is a no-brainer craft. Not only is it the best slot, but it is also in a slot that if you were to get another myth weapon, say from Vault, you would equip both and have your crafted weapon in the offhand. For a 2-hander spec, the decision is a bit more complex, but ultimately the best choice is always crafting a 2-hander. I took a sample gear set that I would have had from M+ at the start of a season at full 266 eye level. Here is a simple crafted gear Drop-Demizer. A 2-hand weapon is a 4% increase, the 1-hand weapon is a 2.5% increase, and then the next best things are leg at 1.2% or a ring at 1.4%. But this is a really reductive sim because it's not a real scenario. It doesn't account for hero crests, the fact you can craft 2 items, and of course, embellishments. At the start of the season, we had 320 hero crests going into Mythic Week. That is 5 upgraded slots. Generally, the safest play here is to fully upgrade 1 ring and 1 trinket to reduce risk of crest waste in later weeks. And then you fully upgrade chest, head, and legs because those are the strongest slots. But if you weren't crafting a weapon, you would be upgrading the weapon. Here are the combinations I would realistically consider crafting with only 1 craft. The gap is closer. It is now 1.4% better to craft the 2-handed weapon. This sim uses 80 myth crests and 300 hero crests for every combination. Now, if we pile more and more resources onto this, we can eventually find combinations that narrowly beat a staff in the first week. But these are fake. You would never do these, and the reason is crest efficiency. 1 single myth drop from raid brings the 2-hander within error of the less efficient crafts, and then week 2 comes along and we make our second embellishment and the staff skyrockets back ahead because of its crest efficiency. Now this does require you to get myth track pieces, but because there is a vault, you are likely to get 1 usable myth track piece every week, and then from that you literally need 1 single drop from raid ever to sort you for the tier. In the worst case scenario where you don't raid and you also get unlucky in Vault, you could justify going for 4 individual crafts by week 4. But you're not going to be any stronger for it, and I would say crest efficiency is very important if you aren't raiding, because getting to the Myth of the Dawn achievement is probably the biggest gate in gearing at the moment. Now there is one more case where you don't craft a weapon. It's if you were to get that weapon from raid. Every tier, hunters go through the weapon gamble where they can elect to hold off on a craft hoping for a weapon drop from an early boss, but it does feel really bad when they don't get it. Sometimes other weapon types can do this as well. Agi 2-handers usually can do this. Strength 2-handers usually can't because those are usually on later bosses. Sometimes we have a staff on an early boss, but this tier there was no staff until Lura, meaning it was undeniably the best craft in all situations for a caster to craft a staff. Even in the rare scenario you got a staff in your vault, it wouldn't really matter because you would just take something else from your vault and be stronger anyways. Oh, and one last downside to fit in about weapons, Holy Paladins do not run shields in prog anymore. You're not allowed to press Shield of the Righteous as a Holy Paladin. I think that's kinda lame. Now this weapon crafting scenario has been a thing since the start of War Within. This was not a thing back in Dragonflight. In Dragonflight, I was using crafted legs, wrists, boots, rings, etc. It was actually considered bad to craft a two-hander back then. What changed? So firstly, they buffed the myth track. In Aberrus, max dungeon gear was 441 compared to 447 crafted, and in Amirjasil, max dungeon gear was 483 compared to 486 crafted, which is just 3 eye levels. So back then, we didn't need to craft for the eye level in the slot, we crafted for the embellishment instead. And now, embellishments suck. Welcome to my video about embellishments. I have prepared a sim of every embellishment I can use. The best embellishment is Darkmoon Sigil Hunt at 1.1% increase. The next best is Arcanoweave, which would be about 0.9% accounting for the ally buff. Everything else is pretty much dead. None of these are particularly interesting. They are all just stat procs that give less than 1% damage. If you have a crafted ring, you're forced to use Focusing Iris, which is a single target proc that isn't even good. Lower Worshipper's Band is about 1% if you run full haste gems, but it's not really worth the lack of flexibility. There are some decent armor type embellishments, and when I say decent, I mean like 0.1% better. Like Shaman does use the World Tender set in BIS, but look at this sim, it really doesn't matter. You use 2 embellishment slots for 2% damage, which is 1% per slot. Technically, you are gaining maybe like 0.3% damage max from these 2 items. And this is actually kind of confusing because these 2 items are recommended by every LE guide as BIS. But then you look at the people playing LE and a lot of them are not running this set. Like me, who initially crafted a weapon and then 2 important slots during my progression, I simply did not have the resources to swap to the World Tender set just for 0.2% DPS. So we have a whole system of tiny stat procs. They are slightly too good to ignore, you need to be using 2, but they are also not good enough. Like, you don't really care about them, they are just tiny stat procs that happen, they are just there to be there. Your choice of which embellishment you use doesn't really matter, but then also the same 2 embellishments are proven to just be the best for everyone, so everyone uses them, resulting in a whole system where 90% of the player base just puts Arcanoweave or Hunt on their crafted item and forgets about it. And it's actually kind of funny because there are items out there that I have not even heard of. I just learned about Ranger General's Grips, a male embellishment that causes an Elven Ranger to launch a surprise attack. I am honestly curious how many of these even exist in the game at this moment. Or something like Signet of Azerothian Blessings that was actually very good in beta but got a very harsh 75% nerf and nobody uses this now either. Now back in Dragonflight, embellishments were introduced to the game and they were a lot stronger. Here is my first week Magmarax prog kill where I used the Toxic Boot embellishment that slowed me a bit and it did 5.5% of my damage. If this log was from today, it would probably do 1.8% of my damage. On my Volcaros prog kill, I had 1 copy of Shadowflame Patch, which was just the basic filler embellishment back then. It did 1.6% of my damage, which would probably do 0.8% today. Too much time has passed for me to sim them, but the stat embellishments were also really good back then. In this log, I am using Adaptive Dracothist Arm Guards, which was a really nice all-stat proc for male users that would clear any embellishment today. Of course, embellishments back then were definitely not perfect. There were definitely some really bad embellishments then as well, and there were other issues like everyone wanting Lariat in Season 1, but at least embellishments made you feel something. Embellishments also scaled with item level in Dragonflight. Today, they do not. In my bank, I have a blue silken lining from Dragonflight and a dusk thread from War Within. The embellishment from Dragonflight is currently stronger than an embellishment from the expansion that came after it. The War Within is the expansion where they changed the embellishment design to what it currently is. Embellishment value was reduced across the board such that every embellishment was worth about 1%. They also introduced the Darkmoon sigils in War Within. Darkmoon sigils are 4 powerful embellishments that can only be placed on crafted weapons. And I say they are powerful, but realistically only 1 of the 4 have been good in both expansions and the other 3 have been pretty trash. And I think these kinds of embellishments have gotten a bit boring, because this is part of the reason why everyone crafts a weapon now. Not only is a weapon the highest damage slot, the most crest efficient slot, but weapons also have exclusive access to the best embellishment. It was even worse in War Within because the second best embellishment was the Nerubian armor banding to double your Darkmoon sigil. Now I've made such a big deal about weapons, but I am not currently using a crafted weapon on any character. And that is because we are in the point of the season where we are full myth 6 out of 6 geared. And that means you have to drop item level in 2 slots to run embellishments. Because even at their worst, an embellishment is still better than 4 eye level on 1 item. But this is also close and it doesn't really matter for 0.1% DPS. All of these things come together to make crafting kinda scripted right now. I could literally give a full crafting guide in 5 seconds. First craft should be a two-handed with Hunt. After that, craft in any slot that you don't have on Myth-Track, and if you have full Myth-Track, craft a Cloak and a Wrist. There you go, that will be valid for the next 2 seasons unless they change something. Also, I have some more general remarks about Crests to make. Two-handers are OP for gearing. Not just crafted two-handers, just any two-hander. You save so many crests playing a class that uses a two-hander. 80 crests to upgrade something that is worth 2 slots for other classes is kinda crazy. A rogue, for example, is always playing 80 crests down until halfway through the season. I don't know if the solution is to double the cost of two-handers though, because spending 160 crests on one item also just doesn't sound too fun. Maybe half cost on one-handers? Crafting as a whole does have a really weird relation between spark cost and crest cost. Right now, crafting is expensive in crests. You spend 80% of your weekly crests on a single craft, so there is a huge stress that your crafts have to be used to optimize crests. But crests are also not efficient to use on a slot that you already have upgraded with hero crests. And when you get the achievement, crafts do not get discounted, making crafting another item once you're past 285 eye level very demanding. And hero crest crafting is very useless now that hero crest actually means something. I guess delve mains might find use for it, that's about it. Apart from that, it's like a huge waste. Maybe crafts are just too high eye level. Crafted items were initially designed to cover for slots that you couldn't get mythic items in. But now we live in a bonus roll world where myth-track items grow on trees. So maybe the item level and thus the crest cost of crafted items could potentially be lowered. Apart from crafting, I actually do kind of like this new crest system we have though. I think it was nice that hero crests actually mattered for more than 1 week. And I think the scarcity of myth crests gives more of a decision making process behind upgrading. It's also nice for loot distribution. Everyone can only really upgrade 1 item per week, meaning you don't want to funnel all your loot to one guy and actually want to spread it around to your entire raid, meaning even tanks and healers get loot. And it also kind of made mythic splits irrelevant. For all the commotion behind mythic splits, we were only 1 to 2 eye levels behind race war first guilds, and we were on the same eye level as other guilds near our rank that did do mythic splits. People who didn't raid were behind in eye level, but that is probably always going to happen. It definitely could have been much worse. I remember back in Undermine, there were some unholy DKs that bought full loot clears 6 weeks in and were like 5 eye levels above everyone else. That did not happen this time. And the advantage raiders had was instantly nullified when bonus rolls came around. The only thing I think was maybe a downside was that we got a lot of free crests. I was very surprised to see Nullius give 60 hero crests and 30 myth crests. It was definitely a lot for a delve boss that is meant to be kind of optional. It lets some people finish hero crests very early. I was done with hero crests on mythic week 2. And it also enabled some degeneracy where people sacrificed their character, trading down all of their myth crests into hero crests to get the achievement on an alt and then use the discount on their main. But anyways, what I am trying to say with this video is that I think crafted gear as a whole is getting a bit stale. I kinda hope there is maybe a bit more to theory craft with next season. I don't think embellishments need to be super powerful, but if I am committing 2 gear slots to something, I think it should be at least interesting, and I don't think embellishments are interesting right now. Okay, so while I was making this video, it was discovered that there was an embellishment that was actually good. The Darkmoon Sigil Blood and Darkmoon Dominion Blood are embellishments that proc your lowest stat, but if all 4 of your stats are equal, they were all considered to be your lowest stat, and all 4 of them were procced, making this embellishment give 2,784 total stats per proc with a 25% uptime. Now, this was obviously unintended and was fixed within 2 days of being made public. But it was fun to sort out a gear set for the Darkmoon Blood build where I essentially had full bis, 651 in all stats without any downranked gems. Some people were using single stat gems from like TBC, I wasn't, I actually had a perfect build. I did a full raid clear with it and it was actually less good than I was expecting. I only got rank 1 on 1 boss. There was just too much sacrifice with losing 2 embellishments, a trinket, half your stat budget going into suboptimal stats, that I don't really think this was completely broken, but it was definitely better than not having it. It's all fixed now though, and the embellishment in question, like many others, is bad.